Chapter 5 of Book 1 is Alchemical Magic. Gold from the 7 metals. And we can trace some of this to the Yazidi, as they're called. Being an element of the 30,000-year-old Kurdish culture. I know even Kurdish isn't quite the right word, but whatever. It is not necessary here to enter into a long detail of the merits of alchemical authors and philosophers. Suffice it to say that alchemy, the grand touchstone of natural wisdom, is of spiritual origin. Rajpur, the first philosopher, by fire, made pure gold from all the 7 metals. He brought the sun 10 times brighter from the bed of Saturn and fixed it with the moon, who thereby copulating begot a numerous offspring of an immortal nature, a pure living spiritual sun, burning in the refulgency of its own divine light, a seed of a sublime and fiery nature, a vigorous progenitor. This Rajpur was the father of alchemy, illuminated divinely from above. He knew everything, yet seemed to know nothing. His precepts of art were left in hieroglyphics, yet in such sort that none but the favorites of adepts ever reaped benefit thereby. He was the first who engraved pure Kabbalah in the most pure gold, and when he died, resigned it to his father, who lived eternally, yet begot him not. That father gives it to his sons, who follow the precepts of wisdom with diligence, ingenuity, and industry, and with a pure, chaste, and free mind. Hermes Trismegistus, Gober, Artachius, Bacon, Helmet, Muili, and Basil Lauron have written most profoundly, yet abstrusely, and all declare not the thing sought for. Some say they were forbid, others that they declared it obviously and intelligibly. Yet some few little points they kept to themselves. However, far off the main point, they lead us. Of this be sure, that something valuable is to be drained, as it were, out of each. Gober is good, Artachius is better, but Flamel is best of all. And better still than those is the instructions I give. For with them, a man, following my directions, shall never want gold. Therefore, to be an adept is possible, but first seek the kingdom of God within thine own soul, and all these things shall be added unto you. This is truth, incontrovertible, and herein lies a vast service. Seek, and ye shall find, but remember, whatsoever ye ask, that shall ye receive. Now, like the center, like a circle, taking up about a third that page was quite difficult to read because there's parts of it that just aren't printed. The Kabbalah, in its utmost purity, is contained in the many precepts given in this volume. The Kabbalah enables you to understand, to bring your knowledge, your understandings to act, and by that means to attain knowledge. Knowledge makes the disciple of wisdom. Wisdom makes whom it pleases adepts in magic. To be an adept, according to divine wisdom, is no contemptible calling. The noble and virtuous brethren of the high adepts hold this truth sacred, that virtue flies from no man. Therefore, how desirable a thing is virtue, They teach you first wisdom, then charity, love, mercy, faith, and constancy. All these appertain to virtue. Therefore, it is physically possible for any well-inclined man to become an adept in Hindu magic, provided he lays aside his pride of reasoning, all obstinacy, blindness, hypocrisy, incredulity, superstition, deceit, and so on. An adept, therefore, is one who not only studies to do good upon earth in respect to his moral duties, but who studies and ardently believes his benevolent Creator to bestow on him wisdom and knowledge from the fullness of his treasury, and he meditates day and night how he may attain the true aquavita, how he may be filled with spiritual power, which, when he is made so happy, his spiritual and internal eye is open to a glorious prospect of mortal and immortal riches. He wants not food, raiment, joy, or any other thing. He is filled with the celestial spiritual manna. He enjoys the marrow and rich things of the earth. Therefore, to be an adept, as I have before hinted, is to know thyself, be truthful, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And by this thou shalt come to the fulfillment of thy desires, O man, but by no other means under the scope of divine wisdom. When thy soul shall be made full by the divine ambrosial nectar, then shall thy understanding be more clear than the noontide sun. Then by thy strong and spiritualized intellectual eye shalt thou see into the great treasury of nature, and thou shalt praise God with thy whole heart. Then wilt thou see the folly of the world, and thou shalt unerringly accomplish thy desire, and shalt possess the true philosopher's stone, for the profit of thy neighbor. I say, thou shalt, visibly and sensibly, according to the corporeal faculties, not imaginary, not delusively, but real. The author avouches that he has actually seen the stone which converts base metals into gold, that he has seen it with his eyes and handled it with his fingers, and taken from his own relation of the fact, notwithstanding the materialist's declamation against the possibility of obtaining it. I have divers times handled that stone with my hands, and have seen a real transmutation of saleable quicksilver with mine eyes, which in proportion did exceed the powder which made the gold in some 1,000 degrees. It was of the color that is in saffron, being weighty in its powder, and shining like bruised glass, when it should be the less exactly beaten. But there was once given unto me the 4th part of 1 grain. I call also a grain the 600th part of an ounce. This powder I involved in wax, scraped off a certain letter, lest in casting it into the crucible it should be dispersed through the smoke of the coals, which pellet of wax I afterwards cast into the 3-cornered vessel of a crucible upon a pound of quicksilver, hot and newly bought, and presently the whole quicksilver, with some little noise, stood still from flowing, and resided like a lump. But the heat of that argent bead was as much as might forbid melted lead from recoagulating. The fire being straightway after increased under the billows, the metal was melted, the which the vessel of fusion being broken, I found to weigh 8 ounces of the most pure gold. Therefore a computation being made, a grain of that powder doth convert 19,200 grains of impure and volatile metal, which is obliteratable by the fire, into true gold. For that powder, by uniting the aforesaid quicksilver unto itself, preserved the same at one instant from an eternal rust, putrefaction, death, and torture of the fire, howsoever most violently it was, and made it as an immortal thing against any vigor or industry of art and fire, and transchanged it into the virgin purity of gold. At leastwise one only fire of coals is required herein. There are, physical processes, but let's be real. It's about what it does to us psychologically and spiritually more than anything else. By which ye see that so learned and profound a philosopher as the author could not so easily have been made to believe that there existed a possibility of transmutation of base metals into pure gold without he had actually proved the same by experiment. And it indicates that it's just tends to be more costly than actually buying the gold. And of course, remember the dangers of using mercury and some other stuff. Again, let the standing monuments, temples, and lacemeries of the adepts and lamas to be seen in India every day stand as a testimony to the truth of the existing possibility of transmutation. Likewise, I mention a stone that I saw and had in my possession, which cured all disorders, the plague not excepted. I shall relate the circumstances, which are as follows. There was a certain master lama whose name was Katub, being sometime at a mosque in the northwest province of India, with Ka Lama Mumnataj, he being in the temple of Syunbia Zurija, and taking pity on one Melius, a certain Franciscan monk, a most famous, preached of Gallo Bretagne, having an erysipelas in his arm. On a certain evening, when the monk did almost despair, he swiftly tinged a certain little stone in a spoonful of almond milk. And, back in the day, they didn't use all the some of the weird chemicals and stuff. They just, ground up almonds and water. And presently withdrew it thence. So he says to the keeper, take this something to that monk, and how much soever he shall take thereupon, he shall be whole, at least within a short hour's space. Which thing even so came to pass, to the great admiration of the keeper and the sick man, not knowing from whence so sudden health shone upon him, seeing that he was ignorant that he had taken anything, for his left arm, being before hugely swollen, fell down as that it could scarcely be discerned from the other. On the morning following, I, being entreated by some officers of the English army, came to Benares as a witness of his deeds. Therefore, they desired to contract a friendship, which was refused with all speed. Soon afterwards, I saw a poor old woman who, from the age of 16 years, had labored with an intolerable megrim, cured in my presence. Indeed, he, by the way, lightly dipped the same little stone in a spoonful of oil of olives, and presently cleansed the same stone by licking it with his tongue, and laid it up into a snuff-box. But that spoonful of oil he poured into a small bottle of oil, whereof one only drop he commanded to be anointed on the head of the aforementioned old woman, who was thereby straightway cured, and remained whole, at which thee may be amazed. But my most dear disciple, unless thou come hitherto, so as to be able, by one only remedy, to cure every disease, thou shalt remain in thy young beginnings, however old thou shalt become. Thee should ascend to this, because I had learned that from the secrets of Rajapur, and being now more confirmed by sight and hope, thee may say that this new mode of curing was unaccustomed and unknown to thee. I therefore say to thee, that a young prince of our court, Viscount of Gaunt, brother to the Prince of Episoi, of a very great house, was so wholly prostrated by the gout, that he henceforth lay only on one side, being wretched and deformed with many knots. He therefore, taking hold of my right hand, said, Wilt thou that I cure the young man? I will cure him for thy sake. But, I replied, he is of that obstinacy, that he had rather die than drink one only medicinal potion. Be it so, said Kama Lama Mumtaj, for neither do I require any other thing than that he do every morning touch this little stone thou seest with the top of his tongue, for after 3 weeks from hence, let him wash the painful and unpainful knots with his own urine, and thou shalt soon afterwards see him cured, and soundly walking. Go thy ways, and tell him with joy what I have said. I therefore, being glad, went to Brussels, and told him what the Kalama had said. But the potentate answered, Go and tell him that if he shall restore me, as thou hast said, I will give him as much as he shall require. Demand the price, and I will willingly sequester that which is deposited for his security. And when I declared the thing to Kalama on my return, he was very wrath, and said, That prince is mad, or witless, and miserable, and therefore will I never help him. For neither do I stand in need of his money, neither do I yield, nor am I inferior to him, nor could I ever induce him afterwards to perform what before he had promised. It happened in the meantime that a friend, overseer, and master of a large field in India, being exceedingly fat, most earnestly requested of Kalama that he might be freed from his fatness, unto whom Kalama offered a small piece of that little stone, that he might once every morning lick or speedily touch it with the top of his tongue. And within 3 weeks I saw his breast made more straight or narrow by one span, and him to have lived no less whole afterwards. Wherefore the aforesaid gouty prince might have been cured according to the manner Kalama promised, had he spoken not of his money. In the meantime I sent to Kalama Mumtaj for a remedy in the case of poison given to a native by a secret enemy, for he miserably languished. All his joints were pained, and his pulse, vehement, being at length become an intermitting one, did accompany the faintings of his mind, and extinguishment of strength. Kamalama, being still detained in the temple, commanded my servant, whom I had sent, that forthwith he should bring unto him a small bottle of oil of olives, and as little stone aforesaid, being tinged therein, as at other times. He sent that oil unto me, and he told the servant that with one only small drop of the oil I should anoint only one place of the pain, or all places if I would. The which I did, and the native felt helped thereby. In the meantime the enemy, according to his lot, being about to die, bade that pardon should be craved of me for his sin, so that I knew that he had given poison, the which I suspected, and therefore also I procured with all care to extinguish slow venom, which, through the grace of magic favoring the native, escaped. Seeing that afterwards many other cures were performed upon certain natives, the same Lama also cured an abbess who for 18 years had her right arm swelled with an entire deprivation of motion, and the fingers thereof stiff and unmovable, only by the touching of her tongue with this admirable stone. But very many, being present witnesses of the same wonders, did suspect some hidden sorcery or diabolical craft, for the common people have it for an ancient custom that whatsoever honest thing their ignorance has determined not to comprehend, they do, for a privy shift of their ignorance, refer to the same to be the juggling of an evil spirit. But I can never decline so far, because the remedy was magical and natural, for neither words, ceremonies, nor any other suspected thing was required. For neither is it lawful, according to man's power of understanding, to refer to the glory of God shown forth in nature unto the devil, 4. None of those people have required aid of the Lama, as from necromancy any way suspected. Yea, the thing was at first made trial of with smiling, and without faith and confidence, yet this easy method of curing shall long remain suspected by many, for the wit of the vulgar being inconstant and idle, they do more readily consecrate so great bounty of restitution unto diabolical contrivance than to divine goodness, the framer, lover, saviour, refresher of human nature, and the father of the poor. And these vile prejudices are not only inherent in the common people, but also in those that are learned, who rashly search unto the beginning of healing, being not yet instructed or observing the common and blockish rules, because they are always wise as children, who have never gone over their mother's threshold, being afraid of every fable. For they who have not hitherto known the whole circuit of diseases to be included within the spirit of life, which maketh the assault, or if they hereafter, reading my instruction by the way, shall imprint on themselves this moment of concernment of healing, nevertheless, because they have been already before accustomed from the very beginnings of their studies to the precepts of the humorists, they will be easily at length depart from me, and leap back to the favorite bigotry and ancient opinion of the schools of materia medica. But now I will hasten to the manner of preparation necessary to qualify a man for the attainment of these sublime gifts. Of the preparation of a man to qualify him for the search of this treasure, and of the first matter, prima materia, of the stone. Lesson 1. Preparation for this work is simply this: learn to cast away from thee all vile affections, all levity and inconstancy of mind. Let all thy dealings be free from deceit and hypocrisy. Avoid the company of vain young men. Hate all profligacy and profane speaking. Lesson 2. Keep thy own and thy neighbor's secrets. Court not the favors of the rich. Despise not the poor, for he who does will be poorer than the poorest. Lesson 3. Give to the needy and unfortunate what little thou canst spare, for he that has but little, whatever he spares to the miserable, wisdom shall amply reward him. Lesson 4. Be merciful to those who offend thee or who have injured thee, for what must that man's heart be who would take heavy vengeance on a slight offense? Thou shalt forgive thy brother until 70 times 7. Lesson 5. Be not hasty to condemn the actions of others, lest thou shouldest the next hour fall into the very same error. Despise scandal and tattling. Let thy words be few. Lesson 6. Study day and night, and supplicate thy Creator that he would be pleased to grant thee knowledge and understanding, and that the pure spirits may have communication with and influence in thee. Lesson 7. Be not overcome with drunkenness, for be assured that half the evils that befall mankind originate in drunkenness. Well, perhaps made possible by drunkenness, but for too great a quantity of strong liquors deprive men of their reason. Then, having lost the use of the faculty of their judgment, they immediately become the recipient of all evil influences, and are justly compared to weathercocks that are driven hither and thither by every gust of wind, so that those who drown the reasonable power are easily persuaded to the lightest and most frivolous pursuits, and from these to vices more gross and reprobate. For the ministers of darkness, evil spirits, have never so favorable an opportunity of insinuating themselves into the minds and hearts of men as when they are lost in intoxication. I pray you to avoid this dreadful vice. Lesson 8. Avoid gluttony and all excesses. It is very pernicious, and from the evil spirits. These are the things that constantly tempt man, and by which he falls a prey to his spiritual adversary, for he is rendered incapable of receiving any good or divine gift. Besides the divine and angelic powers or essences, delight not to be conversant about a man who is defiled and stinking with debauchery and excess. Lesson 9. Covet not much gold, but learn to be satisfied with enough. For to desire more than enough will keep thee from obtaining occult powers. Lesson 10. Read often these 10 preparatory lessons to fit thee for the great work and for the receiving of higher things. For the more pure thou art in heart and mind, by so much quicker shall you perceive those high secrets I teach, and which are entirely hid from the discernment of the vicious and depraved, because it never can happen that such a source of treasure can be attained merely to satisfy our more gross, earthly, and vain desires and inclinations, because here nothing must be thought to be grasped or wrested out of this book, but to the fulfilling of a good end and purpose. And when thou shalt have so far purified thy heart, as I have spoken, is indispensably necessary for the receiving of every good thing, thou shalt then see with other eyes than thou dost at present. Thy spiritual eye will be opened, and thou shalt read man as plain as thou wilt our books. But for all this depend not on the strength of thy own wisdom, for even then, when we think our hearts secure, if we do not watch them, that they sleep not, evil spirits or their ministers immediately take us at this unguarded moment, and tempts us into actual commission of some sin or other. Either they excite our appetite for lust and concupiscence, or any other deadly sin. Lesson 6. Muhanji, that ancient Hindu adept, wrote touching the attainment of this stone, which he pronounced to be of all benefit to man, and one of the greatest blessings he could possess. And although his writings contain much of the excellency of truth, being wrapped up in such symbolic figures, it renders them exceedingly difficult to be understood by the Western student of Hindu magic. Yet, if comprehended, they contain some very great secrets by which the mortal man may profit. Now, it belongs to our purpose to know what it is from which we must extract the first matter of this stone, to go on with our process, because ye must have materials to work upon, for all philosophers agree that, the first matter being found, we may proceed without much difficulty. For the first matter, I shall speak as plainly as possible. First, the grand question in debate is, where is it to be found? I say it is to be found in ourselves. We all possess this first matter. From the beggar to the king, every mother's son carries it about him. And could our ingenious chemists but find a process for the extracting, how well would all their labors be repaid? The next question naturally comes to us. How are ye to draw or attract the secret matter of the stone out of thyself? Not by any common means, and yet it is to be drawn into every action, and that by the most simple means, and in a manner that the attaining of the philosopher's stone would very soon follow it. I pray you, my friend, look into thyself, and endeavor to find out in what part of thy composition is the prima materia of the lapis philosophorum, or out of what part of thy substance can the first matter of our stone be drawn out. Thou sayest it must either be in the hair, sweat, or excrement. I say in none of these thou shalt ever be able to find it, and yet thou shalt find it in thyself. Many great philosophers and chemists, whom I have the pleasure to know, affirm that, admitting the possibility of transmutation, it, i.e. the first matter, must be taken from the purest gold. To this I say it must not, neither has it anything at all to do with extrinsical gold. They will then say that the pure ends of gold may be drawn from gold itself. True, it may be so, but then I would ask if they could ever produce more gold than that out of which the soul or essence was extracted. If they have indeed found out a secret beyond the powers of my comprehension, because it is against reason to suppose that if a pound of gold yields a drachm of the soul or essence, that only will tinge any more than a pound of purified lead, or mercury, because I have tried various experiments, and I have, in some of my first essays, turned both lead and mercury into good gold, but no more than that out of which the soul was extracted. But, however, not to lose our time in vain and ridiculous disputation, know that whatever prodigious things are experiments have been tried with respect to the first matter by external subjects, either in the mineral, animal, or vegetable kingdoms, as they are called. I say in us is the power of all wonderful things which the Supreme Creator has, of His infinite mercy, implanted in our souls. Out of her is to be extracted the first matter, the true argent viva. The mercury of the philosophers is the true ends of a circle divided by 3, or is that just supposed to be salt? These, a spiritual living gold, are waterish mercury, our first matter, which, by being matured, is capable of transmuting 1,000 PTS. What is PTS? 1,000 pints of impure metal into good and perfect gold, which endure fire, test, are couple of the manner of extracting the first matter of the philosopher's stone, and the use of it is put to in purifying the imperfect metals and transmuting them into good gold. Lesson 12. Take the foregoing instructions as thy principal instrument, and know that our soul has the power, when the body is free, as I before said, of any pollution, the heart void of malice and offense. I say the soul is then a free agent and has the power, spiritually, magically, to act upon any matter whatsoever. Therefore I said the first matter is in the soul, and the extracting of it is to bring the dormant power of the pure, living, breathing spirit and eternal soul into act. Note well that every agent has its power of acting upon its patient. Every essence that is distilled forth is received into a recipient, but that recipient must first be made clean. Even so much the soul and heart of man. The vile affections must be thrown away and trampled underfoot. Then shalt thou be able to proceed in thy work, which do in the manner following. Lesson 13. The expense thou must be at will be but a trifle. All the instruments necessary are but 3, viz. A crucible, an egg philosophical, and a retort with its receiver. Put your fine gold in weight about 5 DWTS draughts. Fill it up. Put it into your philosophic egg. Pour upon it the twice of its weight of the best Hungarian mercury. Well, if it's a philosophic egg, maybe it's not a physical thing, and maybe it's philosophic mercury and all that stuff. But and close up the egg with a hermetic seal, and put it for 3 months in horse dung. Take it out at the end of that time, and see what kind of form thy gold and mercury has assumed. Take it out, pour on it half its weight of good spirit of Sol Amen. Set them in a pot full of sand over the fire in the retort. Let them distill into a pure essence. Add 1 pint of this mercury, 2 pints of thy water of life, or prima materia. Put them into thy philosophical egg, and set them into horse dung for another 3 months, and then take them out, and see what thou hast, a pure ethereal essence, which is the living gold. Pour this pure spiritual liquor upon a drachm of molten fine gold, and you will find that which will satisfy thy hunger and thirsting after this secret. For the increase of thy gold will seem to thee miraculous, as indeed it is. Take it to a jeweler's or goldsmith's. Let him try it in thy presence. Lesson 14. When thy spiritual eye is opened, and thou shalt begin to see what end thou wert created. 2. Thou shalt want no necessary thing either for thy comfort or support. Only keep in the rules I have prescribed in the beginning and end of this big treatise. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Be not hasty to reveal any secrets thou mayest learn, for the good spirits, both day and night, will be thy instructors, and will continually reveal thee many secrets. Think not that thou canst either profit or benefit so much by the instruction of those who profess great advantages in classical education and high schooling. Be assured they are in spiritual knowledge and much in the dark, for he who desires not spiritual knowledge cannot attain it by any means but by the attainment of true wisdom. Now, not, just because it's witchcraft doesn't mean the entities are going to be not mean to you. So sometimes they're nice to you. Sometimes they seem good and beneficial, and but if this stuff's like stuff for all of humanity or whatever, why is it secret, right? Now, we know there's harmful substances and stuff like this, so some stuff's done wrong. But, of course, we're talking a form of chemistry, right? Or an earlier sense of chemistry.